Okay. Hi everyone, we are from group 22. My teammates are Sharing Lama, Shravani Manne and myself Lakshmi Priyanka Vimla. Today we are going to discuss about the risk assessment of additional works in railway construction investments using the Bayes network. Coming to the abstract, in this study we usually discussed about the risk management by using a construction scenario for railway projects. Here we used Bayes and networks, which are well-programmed networks that can be utilized to carry out risk mitigation measures. Technique based on standard algorithms has been introduced to eliminate potential dangers in construction projects, which includes risk detection, analysis, and assessment. And also, the risk refers to unforeseeable events that occur during a project's implementation, and whereas risk mitigation refers to the actions taken to reduce these risks' impact. And the implementation of these major railway infrastructure construction projects in line with long development objects is a multi-stage process which takes a long period of time. So there should be a well risk management strategy plan which incorporates a variety of scenarios for dealing with various risks that which can help that a construction project is completed on time and in budget. And coming to the introduction of this railway project, next slide. Coming to the introduction, here we discussed about what is risk. It usually used to termed as a circumstance in which there are unknowns that develop during the execution of any tasks. Here we consider a EU project, an initiative to revamp the country's railway network, which is now ongoing. As a part of this project, there are expected investments and the 9,000 kilometers of railway lines will be built, renovated and upgraded. Putting such a large-scale strategy into action, which comes with a number of risks, including the possibility of additional or unanticipated work. Here we have to choose the right risk management strategy, which help to mitigate the negative effects of the risk, and also we have to ensure that investment objectives must be attained. Here the risk can be calculated using the R equal to F of P comma C. Here where R indicates the risk and P represents the probability, chance of an event occurring, and C represents the influence or consequence of the occurrence on the project's outcome. Coming to the next slide, risk management process. Here in this figure, we can see that how the risk will be assessed and how risk will be identified and how risk will be evaluation. Actually, the flow of risk analysis and assessment is depicted in this diagram, and the method, like an attempt to integrate a risk mitigation feature in the model, the scenario will be similar. Actually, when we assess the risk, we have to first identify the risk, and then we have to next analysis the risk, and we have to evaluate the risk. These three parts comes under the risk assessment. Next, coming to next slide, risks of additional works in railway. This slide will continued by Shravani.
Thank you, Priyanka. So I'll be continuing from here. So I'll be presenting about risk of additional works in railway projects. So based upon the assumptions, the authors designed questionnaires with a few questions to identify the elements to identify like emerging works in rail infrastructure. So these are there are like certain questionnaires which stakeholders deal with the construction process. So So the responses were used to identify risk factors as well as provide a qualitative description of newly emerging types of construction activity, the impact of specific causes of additional work on the appearance of additional cost during the implementation of the building investment, as well as prolonging of the construction and assembly work periods was also emphasized by the respondents. The respondents also designed a probability of occurrence to each response, which was indicated in percent. So here is a flow chart which describes about the factors of the risk identification process. And coming to the risk analysis using the Bayes network method. So in this design, there are like certain works which are identified based upon the research, and the author identified those aspects uh, which mostly include high estimated by the participants. There are like three factors which were taken into account in developing the proposed risk assessment model. So the three factors are uh, creation of the nodes. So one of the factor is creation of the nodes for the Bayes network. So the Bayes network nodes were formed utilizing risk variables and additional works. So in the risk assessment model, there are 9 nodes. They were each given a series of events that relate to the characteristics of a specific node. So these expert informations were acquired from interviews, research, and from writers' own experiences. Coming to the second factor of the Bayes network, which is assigning event probabilities. So to represent other nodes connected by the reciprocal interactions, which are called conditional probabilities. So this involves the writers analyzing and estimated number of odd possible sequence events. So these are generally called conditional probabilities. And coming to the third factor, which is performing calculations. So the author described how to calculate the percentages based upon the probability of event occurring if event B occurs, and probability of BA is the probability of event B occurring if event A occurs. So the computations provided in the working network are used in the risk assessment evaluation process. So from here, Lama will be continuing.
Hi everyone, my name is Chuning Lama, and I will be covering risk evaluation, building a risk assessment. Matrix methods was proposed to determine the criteria. These methods correspond to the assumption of a work in which the risk is expressed as the product of probability and its effect. Risk evaluation using a matrix requires specifying range of probability values and effects of event and adapting point values for this range. For the probability of event, 5 intervals were proposed corresponding to the assumed probability levels, while the effects of the events were characterized by 3 intervals, which are associated with the event that result in a long implementation time. Can you change the slides, please? Savanya, can you change the slide? Uh, four level of risks. Four levels of risks were proposed. There were low, medium, high, and very high risk level. This was needed for the analysis together with the possible scenario of the events. Furthermore, a color and point value were added to individual matrix cells to fulfill the requirement for the introduction of assumed risk criteria and the effects of risks in the matrix. Uh, Event scenario analysis. Um, Scenario analyzed will be the occurrence of risk factor, including occurrence of project documentation errors. This event has been modeled at the top of the error of project documentation. Thus, 100% possibility was needed to investigate the scenario in the event described as faulty. The effect present in the node, the extension of time was analyzed as the occurrence of the phenomenon can be studied in relation to many variables. The obtained results allow for the classification of potential event in two groups of risk level: low risk level 2 to 5 points and high risk level around 11 to 29 points. According to the risk assessment method, a low level of risk may be assessed by the investor, while a high level of risk should be further assessed, which may lead to the elimination of subsequent extension of the duration of the investment. For a high level of risk, a conservative method of reducing the level of risk has been proposed, namely the so-called risk mitigation. Risk mitigation proposal. Risk mitigation is a strategy of reducing the likelihood or effects of an adverse risk event to an acceptable level. The possible action include reducing the livelihood of faulty documentation or reducing the duration of implementation time. The most popular strategies include risk avoidance, risk transfer, risk mitigation, risk acceptance, and emergency plan. Finally, the summary. Waste network Waste network is a methodology for creating risk management strategies using a standard algorithm that includes risk identification, risk analysis, and risk assessments. This method allows for the construction of complex impact network that can be modeled on the basis of surveys, historical data, or expert opinions. As presented in the discussed event scenario, a well-programmed network can be used to implement risk mitigation method and study its impact on network nodes. Using this method, the user is able to compare different ways to reduce risks, check the effects of reducing the risks of factors causing additional work on other types of the network, or determine a satisfactory level of effects. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.